I never should have gone camping alone. Not there. Not in those woods. The first time I heard about Pine Hollow, it was from an old guy at the gas station near the edge of town. He was one of those weathered types, with skin like cracked leather and a voice like gravel. "You heading up there?" He'd asked, his eyes narrowing at the sight of my gear. Bad idea. Folks go in, don't always come out the same. I laughed it off then. Stories like that are part of the charm, right? A little urban legend to spice up the adventure. I arrived late in the afternoon, the golden hour casting long shadows between the towering pines. It was eerily quiet, save for the rustle of leaves and the occasional distant bird call. By the time my tent was pitched and the fire started, the sun was a low ember on the horizon, smothered by the encroaching dark. That's when I noticed it, the silence. Not just quiet, but the kind of silence that hums in your ears and presses on your chest. Even the usual forest sounds had vanished. No crickets, no rustling leaves. Just nothing. The first night passed uneventfully, though I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I chalked it up to nerves and exhaustion. But the second night, that's when things got strange. It started with the smell. A foul, coppery stench that seeped into the tent, thick enough to taste. I thought maybe an animal had died nearby. But when I unzipped the tent and stepped into the moonlit clearing, the air was sharp and clean. The smell was gone. Then I saw them. Eyes, not one pair, but dozens, reflecting the weak light of my headlamp. They ringed the clearing just far enough to keep their owners hidden. I froze, the primal part of my brain screaming to run, while the logical part told me it was just wildlife, deer, maybe. But deer don't move like that. The eyes blinked in unison and vanished, only to reappear a moment later, closer. A low, guttural sound rumbled through the trees, followed by a series of soft, wet thuds. Something heavy was moving toward me. I bolted, leaving my gear and scents behind. The forest seemed alive, branches clawing at my face and roots snaring my feet. That awful smell returned, stronger now, burning my throat and eyes. I ran until my lungs felt like they'd burst, finally tripping into a narrow ravine. The fall knocked the wind out of me, and for a moment, I lay there, listening. The forest had gone still again, save for the faint sound of trickling water. Then I heard it, whispering. It wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. A susurrus of voices rising and falling like the wind, but with a cadence too deliberate to be natural. "Leave," they seemed to say, though the word was drawn out and garbled, as though spoken underwater. I didn't need to be told twice. Scrambling to my feet, I followed the ravine, keeping to the shadows. My phone's battery was dead, and the moon offered little guidance through the labyrinth of trees. Several times, I thought I saw figures moving between the trunks, tall, spindly shapes that seemed to glide rather than walk. Eventually, I stumbled upon an old fire road. Relief surged through me, but it was short-lived. The whispers had stopped, replaced by a new sound, footsteps, heavy and deliberate, echoing through the night. They weren't behind me but coming from the forest on both sides of the road. I ran again, the shadows stretching and shifting like something alive. My pulse roared in my ears, drowning out everything but the crunch of gravel beneath my boots. The road ended at a clearing, dominated by a decrepit wooden cabin. I hesitated for only a moment before darting inside and slamming the door shut. The cabin was empty, save for a broken chair and a rotting table. The air was thick with dust and decay, but at least the footsteps had stopped, or so I thought. From outside, a soft scratching began, like nails on wood. First at the door, then the windows. The cabin had no locks, so I shoved the chair against the door and backed into a corner, clutching a rusted piece of pipe I'd found on the floor. The scratching turned to pounding, a rhythmic thud that rattled the cabin. The walls groaned, and I could hear the whispers again, louder now, almost chanting. Shadows slid under the door and pooled like liquid across the floor. Then, everything stopped. The silence was deafening. Even the whispers had ceased, leaving only the sound of my ragged breathing. Morning came like a lifeline, the weak sunlight banishing the horrors of the night. When I finally dared to open the door, the forest was eerily normal. No sign of the creatures, the eyes, or the whispers. Just the usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves. I found my car exactly where I'd left it, though my keys were no longer in my pocket. They were in the ignition, waiting for me. I drove out of Pine Hollow and never looked back. But sometimes, late at night, I think I hear the whispers again, faint and distant, calling me back to the forest. I don't answer. For weeks, I convinced myself it was over. Whatever I'd stumbled into in Pine Hollow was a bad dream. A trick of the mind, born of isolation and fear. But deep down, I knew the truth. That forest wasn't done with me. The whispers started again a month later. They came at night, faint but unmistakable. Sometimes they seemed to come from the far corner of my room, other times from just outside the window. No matter where I went, home, work, even the grocery store, I'd catch the faintest echoes, just under the hum of fluorescent lights or the chatter of strangers. Leave, return, come back. I tried to ignore it, drowning the whispers with music, TV, even the hum of a fan at night. But it wasn't just the whispers. Strange things started happening, little incidents that chipped away at my resolve. The first was the scratches. They appeared on my bedroom door, faint at first, just a few jagged lines. I thought it was the cat from the neighbor's yard sneaking in, but they got worse, deeper. One morning, I woke to find my front door marked with claw-like gashes, as if some wild animal had tried to break in. Then there was the smell. That same coppery stench from the forest started seeping into my apartment. It clung to the walls, the furniture, my clothes. No amount of cleaning could erase it. My landlord swore he couldn't smell a thing, but I caught him glancing at the door as if expecting something to burst through. The final straw came one night when I woke to find dirt on my bedroom floor. Not a little, clumps of damp soil and pine needles, as if someone had dragged the forest inside. My boots, which I'd left in the closet, were caked in mud. I hadn't been anywhere near Pine Hollow since the night I escaped. That's when I realized I had no choice. I had to go back. The drive was a blur, a collision of dread and determination. This time, there was no laughter, no dismissive thoughts about urban legends. I knew what waited in Pine Hollow, or at least I thought I did. The gas station was empty when I passed it, its neon sign flickering weakly. The old man wasn't there. For some reason, that unsettled me more than anything else. By the time I reached the forest's edge, dusk had already begun to fall. Shadows stretched long and thin between the trees, reaching out like claws to pull me in. My car's headlights cut a narrow path through the gloom, but the further I drove, the denser the trees became until I was forced to park and continue on foot. The silence was back. Even my own footsteps seemed muted, swallowed by the oppressive stillness. The air was colder than it should have been for the season, and that smell, that awful metallic stink, hung heavy in the air. I didn't have a plan. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Closure, maybe? Answers? All I knew was that the whispers had drawn me here, and now that I was back, they were louder than ever. They led me deeper into the forest, to places I hadn't seen before. The trees grew thicker, their twisted branches knitting together like a canopy of bones. It felt like walking into another world, darker, older, untouched by time. Finally, I found it. Clearing. First, it looked like nothing special. Just an open patch of ground surrounded by ancient trees. But the more I stared, the more I noticed the details. The soil was black, as if scorched, and scattered across it were fragments of something. Not wood, not stone. Something else entirely. They shimmered in the dim light, almost alive. In the center of the clearing was a tree unlike any I'd ever seen. Its bark was pale, almost white, and its branches twisted upward like grasping hands. The whispers were deafening now, swirling around me like a storm. They weren't coming from the clearing or the trees. They were coming from the ground. Leave, return, give yourself. The earth trembled beneath my feet. I stumbled back, nearly falling as the black soil began to shift and crack. Something was rising, clawing its way to the surface. And then I saw it. a figure impossibly tall and thin, its body wrapped in shadows that seemed to writhe and shift like smoke. Its face, or what should have been a face, was featureless, a smooth expanse of pale skin that seemed to pulse in time with the whispers. It reached for me. I ran. This time, I didn't stop. I didn't look back. The forest seemed to close in around me, the trees twisting and shifting as if trying to block my escape. The whispers were everywhere, screaming now, a cacophony of voices that drowned out all thought. Somehow, I made it back to the road. My car was still there, though the tires were slashed and the windows smeared with black handprints. I didn't care. I ran past it, down the road, into the night. I don't know how I got home. I must have walked for miles before someone picked me up. I told them I'd been hiking and got lost. They didn't ask questions. The whispers have stopped. The scratches are gone. Even the smell has faded. But I can't shake the feeling that it's not over. I think the forest let me go because it wanted me to leave, to bring its whispers with me. It's been 6 months since I left Pine Hollow for the second time. For a while, I thought I was safe. The whispers faded, the nightmares subsided, and life returned to some semblance of normal. But deep down, I knew the forest wasn't finished with me. The first sign came during a rainstorm. I was lying in bed, listening to the steady drum of rain on the window, when the power went out. That wasn't unusual. Storms always knocked out the grid in my area. What was unusual was the sound that followed. A low hum, deep and resonant, vibrated through the walls. It was almost imperceptible at first, like the growl of distant thunder. But as I lay there, holding my breath, it grew louder. It wasn't thunder. It was a voice. No, not one voice. Many. Come back. I shot out of bed and grabbed my flashlight, the beam slicing through the darkness of my apartment. The hum was everywhere, vibrating through the floor, the walls, the very air. It wasn't just in my ears, it was in my head. When the sound abruptly stopped, I froze, my heart pounding like a drum. The silence was suffocating, and for a moment, I thought it was over. Then the scratching started. It came from the window, soft at first, but growing more insistent. I turned the flashlight toward it, and the beam illuminated a face. Pale, featureless, pressed against the glass. I screamed and stumbled back, dropping the flashlight. By the time I retrieved it and aimed the beam again, the face was gone, leaving only a faint smudge on the glass. But the scratches continued, now coming from the door, the walls, even the ceiling. The whispers followed, growing louder, more desperate. They weren't just calling me back now, they were begging, pleading, demanding. The next morning, I found dirt on the floor again, thick and damp, with faint footprints leading to my bed. I tried to rationalize it, convince myself it was a prank or a hallucination, but I couldn't ignore the truth. The forest wanted me, and it wasn't going to stop. I started seeing things during the day, shadows flickering just out of sight, figures standing motionless in crowded streets, their pale faces turned toward me. My coworkers noticed the change. They asked if I was sleeping, if I needed to talk to someone. I lied and told them I was fine. I wasn't fine. Every night, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. My apartment became a prison, each dark corner hiding a shadow that might move, each creak of the floorboards a warning. The pale face appeared more often, always just beyond the edge of my vision, watching, waiting. I tried leaving town, packing a bag and driving until the city was a distant memory in my rearview mirror. But the whispers followed. The pale faces appeared in every motel window, every roadside diner. It didn't matter where I went. I couldn't escape. Last night, it escalated. I woke to find my bedroom door wide open, despite locking it before bed. The coppery smell was back, stronger than ever, and the whispers were deafening. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but the screen was covered in static, the faint outline of those pale, featureless faces flickering across it. Then the lights went out. I don't remember much after that, just fragments. Hands reaching for me, voices screaming in my ears, a suffocating darkness that seemed to swallow the very air. When I came to, I was lying in the clearing. The pale tree loomed over me, its twisted branches reaching skyward like skeletal fingers. The soil was damp and cold beneath my hands, and the air was thick with that awful stench. They were there, the figures from the forest, their shadowy bodies circling the clearing, their pale faces turned toward me. The whispers had stopped, replaced by a deafening silence that pressed down on me like a weight. The featureless figures parted, and something emerged from the shadows. The tall, thin creature from before, its smoke-like body shifting and writhing as it approached. It stopped just a few feet away, and for the first time, I saw its face. There were no eyes, no mouth, no features at all. But I could feel it watching me, its presence filling my mind with images of the forest, of the tree, of the endless blackness that lay beneath the soil. And then it spoke, not with words, but with a voice that echoed inside my head, filling every corner of my mind. You belong to us now. I don't remember how I escaped. I woke up on the side of the road, my clothes damp and caked with dirt. My car was parked nearby, the keys in the ignition, as if nothing had happened. But something did happen. I can feel it inside me, a piece of the forest that never let go. The whispers have stopped, but the silence is worse. It's the kind of silence that waits. I know it's not over. The forest let me go once before, but it won't make the same mistake twice. This time, when it calls, I won't be able to resist. I've been trying to write this down because I need someone to know what happened. If you're reading this, it means the forest has won. But maybe, just maybe, you'll be smarter than I was. The whispers came back last night, louder than ever. They weren't just voices anymore. They were screams, overlapping and relentless, drilling into my skull. They filled my tiny apartment, shaking the walls and shattering the glass in every window. It was like the forest itself had invaded, tearing through the thin barrier of my reality. I knew what it wanted. The smell of copper was everywhere, stronger than ever before. I couldn't breathe without tasting it. And when I stumbled into the hallway, clutching my ears against the screams, I saw them. Pale faces, dozens of them, pressing against the walls, the floor, even the ceiling. They didn't move. They didn't blink. They just stared, waiting. I don't remember grabbing my keys. I don't remember starting the car. All I remember is the road, a dark ribbon stretching endlessly into the night. The forest didn't need to call me anymore. I was going willingly. The road to Pine Hollow felt different this time, as though it had grown longer, darker. The headlights barely cut through the shadows, and the trees seemed to lean closer, their branches reaching for the car. By the time I reached the forest's edge, the engine sputtered and died. I didn't bother trying to restart it. The forest didn't want me to drive. It wanted me to walk. The path was the same as before, but the forest wasn't. The air was heavier, the shadows deeper. Every step felt like a struggle, as though the earth itself was resisting me. The whispers were constant now, a steady hum that vibrated through my chest. When I reached the clearing, it was waiting for me. The pale tree towered over the blackened soil, its twisted branches illuminated by a strange, ethereal glow. The shadowy figures surrounded it, their pale faces turned toward me. This time, there were more of them, hundreds, maybe thousands, standing in silent rows like an army. And then it appeared. The tall, thin creature emerged from the shadows, its smoke-like form shifting and writhing. It stopped in front of the tree, its featureless face turned toward me. This time I didn't run. Couldn't. You returned, it said, the voice echoing inside my mind. I wanted to scream, to beg, to fight, but my body wouldn't obey. All I could do was stare as the creature stepped closer, its smoky tendrils reaching out to touch me. The moment they did, I felt it, the forest, the tree, the shadows. They weren't separate things. They were one. And now I was part of it. Images flooded my mind, endless cycles of people drawn to the forest, consumed by its hunger. Some became shadows, like the figures surrounding the clearing. Others were devoured entirely, their essence feeding the tree, the soil, the whispers. And then I saw myself, standing among the shadows, my face pale and featureless, my body blending into the smoke. No! I screamed, breaking free of the creature's grip. The force of it knocked me back, and for a moment the whispers faltered. The figures around the clearing turned, their empty faces watching me. The creature recoiled, its form flickering like a dying flame. I didn't hesitate. I ran. I don't know how I escaped the forest. One moment, I was running through the shadows, the whispers chasing me like a storm. The next, I was standing on the edge of the highway, the forest a distant blur behind me. But I didn't win. I can feel the forest inside me now, a hollow space where something else lives. The whispers are quiet, but they're still there, waiting. The pale faces don't haunt me anymore because I see them when I look in the mirror. I started hearing voices in my head. Not just whispers, words. They tell me to go places, to find people. And when I do, they disappear. I think I'm becoming one of them. If you're reading this, stay away from Pine Hollow. Don't let the whispers call you. Don't let the forest find you. Because once it does, it never lets go. I've given up pretending this isn't happening. My nights are no longer mine, and the days are starting to blur into the same waking nightmare. The forest didn't just haunt me. It planted something inside me, something alive. The changes began small, like shadows flickering in my peripheral vision. I told myself it was exhaustion, the lingering effects of trauma. But the truth is impossible to ignore now. I'm not human anymore. Not fully. Started with the dreams or what I thought were dreams. Every night, I find myself back in Pine Hollow, standing in the clearing. The pale tree is always there, looming, its branches moving in ways they shouldn't. The figures surround me, their featureless faces turned toward the sky, as if waiting for something. And then the creature comes. Its smoke-like form doesn't frighten me anymore. In the dreams, it feels familiar, almost comforting. It doesn't speak to me like before. It doesn't have to. Its thoughts pour into mine, a flood of knowledge I didn't ask for. I know things now, things no one should know. Names, places, events, people. I know where they are. I know where they'll be. And I know what I'm supposed to do. The first time it happened, I tried to resist. I woke in the middle of the night, my body drenched in sweat, the whispers screaming in my head. They weren't calling me to the forest anymore. They were directing me. I saw a face in my mind, a man in his mid-30s, walking home from a bar downtown. I saw the street he was on, the exact moment he'd crossed the intersection. And I saw what would happen if I didn't go. I didn't want to leave, but my legs moved on their own. I don't remember the drive, only that I ended up where the whispers had led me. The man was there, just like in the vision. I called out to him, a lame excuse about being lost, and he stopped to help. He never saw the truck coming. Neither did I. The crash was sudden, violent. The driver swerved and sped off, leaving the man crumpled on the asphalt. I froze, unable to process what had just happened. That's when I felt it, the forest, its satisfaction pulsing through me like a drug. The whispers stopped, leaving only silence. But the next night, they came back. The visions are constant now, each one more vivid than the last. A woman on a hiking trail, a child near a schoolyard, an elderly man crossing a parking lot. Each time I try to resist, but my body betrays me. I'm a puppet, and the forest pulls the strings. I don't know why it's making me do this. These people aren't taken to the forest. They don't disappear into the shadows. They're just gone. Each time, the whispers grow quieter, as if the forest is sated, if only temporarily. But it's never enough. I've started to change physically. My reflection doesn't look like me anymore. My skin is pale, almost translucent, and my eyes have lost their color, fading into a dull, milky gray. When I smile, if I smile, it feels wrong, like my face is trying to mimic an expression it doesn't understand. The worst part is the shadows. They follow me now, clinging to the edges of my vision. They don't move like normal shadows, they ripple, shift, and sometimes, I swear they're watching me. I've tried to stay in the light, but it doesn't matter. The shadows are always there. I know what's coming. The forest isn't just using me. It's remaking me. Every time I obey the whispers, I lose a piece of myself. I can feel it, like a thread unraveling, leaving something hollow in its place. I don't know how much time I have left. This morning, I woke to find dirt on my floor again. But this time, it wasn't scattered. It formed a pattern, spirals and lines etched into the wood. The same pattern I've seen in the clearing, surrounding the pale tree. I think it's a message, or a warning, or maybe it's an invitation. If I go back to Pine Hollow, I know I won't leave again. The forest doesn't let go of what it claims. But staying here isn't an option. The whispers are getting louder, the visions more insistent. I don't trust myself anymore. I'm writing this now because it might be my last chance. If you've read this far, I'm begging you, stay away from Pine Hollow. Don't listen to the whispers, don't follow the shadows. And if you ever see someone with pale skin and milky eyes, run. Don't stop, don't look back, because I think I'm becoming one of them. This will be the last time I write. By the time you find this, I'll be gone. Or worse, I'll be something else. The whispers are constant now, relentless. They don't just speak, they command. I can't shut them out anymore. Can't drown them in noise or bury them in denial. My thoughts aren't even mine. They belong to the forest. I woke up last night covered in dirt, my hands raw and caked with blood. Not mine. The visions I'd been having are no longer just glimpses. They're complete, horrifying memories, as real as if I lived them. I think I did. There was a woman. Her face is still vivid in my mind. The way her eyes widened in fear as she saw me. I can't remember what I did, only that the forest was pleased. The whispers praised me, their approval like a warm tide washing over the hollow parts of my soul. I hate it, but I can't stop. The pale faces are everywhere now. They don't wait in the shadows anymore. They follow me openly, standing on street corners, watching from windows. Last night, I saw one in my living room, its featureless head tilting as I stumbled backward into the wall. It didn't move, didn't come closer. It just watched, its presence a silent accusation. Or maybe it was an invitation. I don't know anymore. I went back to Pine Hollow. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. The drive was endless, the forest looming larger with every mile. By the time I reached the clearing, night had fallen. Though there was no moon, no stars, just darkness. And in that darkness, the pale tree stood, its branches alive with a strange, pulsing light. The shadows were waiting for me, their featureless faces turned toward the tree. They didn't move as I approached, didn't make a sound. It felt like a ceremony, like I was the final piece in some ancient ritual. The creature emerged from the tree itself, its smoke-like body unfurling from the branches. This time, it didn't stop. It moved toward me, wrapping its tendrils around my arms, my legs, my neck. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. And then I felt it. The forest wasn't just claiming me, it was consuming me. I woke up this morning in the clearing, the tree towering over me. My body felt strange, lighter somehow, as if pieces of me had been stripped away. The shadows were gone, but I could feel them inside me now, writhing just beneath my skin. When I looked at my hands, they weren't my hands anymore. They were pale, translucent, the veins beneath the surface pulsing with a dark, shifting light. I don't know how I made it back to my apartment. I don't even remember leaving the clearing. But I know it's over. The forest has me now. The whispers have changed. They're not commands anymore, they're thoughts. My thoughts. They speak in my voice, but they say things I don't understand. Names I've never heard, places I've never been. And they're not just in my head. They're spreading. If you're reading this, it's already too late. The forest isn't just in Pine Hollow. It's everywhere. It's in the shadows, the whispers, the empty spaces we pretend not to notice. It's in me, and soon it will be in you. I didn't think there could be anything left to say. I thought I'd given myself over to the inevitability of what was happening. But tonight, something changed. Something worse. I wasn't alone. I woke in the middle of the night to a sound I hadn't heard in weeks. Knocking. 3 soft, deliberate raps on my apartment door. It wasn't the erratic scratching I'd grown used to, nor the whispers that lived in my mind. It was something new, something human. Or at least it pretended to be. I didn't want to answer. Every fiber of my being screamed to stay in bed, to stay still, to let whatever it was move on. But the knocking came again, this time louder. When I finally gathered the courage to open the door, the hallway was empty. No sign of anyone, just the faint scent of copper lingering in the air. I stepped back into the apartment and locked the door. But when I turned around, someone was standing in the corner of my living room. Not one of the pale figures, not a shadow. It was me. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, some reflection I couldn't place. But the figure stepped forward, and the air around it seemed to ripple and bend. It was identical to me. Same clothes, same face, same dull, hollow eyes. It didn't speak. It didn't move beyond the initial step. It just stood there, watching, its expressionless face tilting slightly as if studying me. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. My throat was dry, my chest tight. All I could do was stare as the thing that looked like me began to smile. Not a normal smile. Not human. Its mouth stretched too wide, the corners pulling back until they nearly touched its ears. And then it whispered, "You're almost ready." The figure vanished the moment the words left its mouth, dissolving into the air like smoke. But the echo of its voice lingered, bouncing off the walls, filling the apartment. I tried to leave, but the door wouldn't open. The locks wouldn't budge. The windows wouldn't break. I was trapped, the whispers rising around me, louder and louder until I thought my head would split open. And then silence. When I woke, the sun was rising, its pale light streaming through the unbroken windows. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. The air was heavy, oppressive, the kind of silence that feels like it's watching you. My phone buzzed on the table, and for a moment, I thought I was imagining it. I hadn't touched it in days, not since the static and the faces began to appear. But now it was normal, no glitches, no distortion. Just a single notification. Unknown number. Come back. I don't know how much longer I can resist. The whispers are louder now, stronger. The shadows follow me wherever I go, their pale faces watching from every corner. I see myself in mirrors, but it's not me. It's the other one, the thing that smiled. The forest isn't just calling me back. It's drawing me in, pulling me like a tide I can't fight. And I don't think I want to fight anymore, because deep down I know the truth. I was never meant to escape. I can feel the forest now, even when I'm miles away. It's in the air I breathe, the pulse in my veins, the spaces between my thoughts. Every moment is a battle, but I'm losing. I don't think I'm supposed to win. Tonight, the whispers stopped. For weeks, they've been my constant torment, an unending chorus of voices demanding, pleading, commanding. But now there's nothing. The silence is deafening, oppressive. It's like the world is holding its breath. The absence of the whispers should be a relief, but it's not. The quiet feels worse, heavier, as though it's waiting for something, or someone. At sunset, I felt it. A pull so strong it brought me to my knees. My hands shook as I tried to hold on to anything. My desk, the chair, the thin tether of my humanity. But the pull only grew stronger, dragging me toward the door. I don't remember putting on my shoes or grabbing my keys. I don't remember starting the car. All I know is that I was driving, the world outside the windows blurring into streaks of shadow and light. The forest was waiting for me. When I arrived at Pine Hollow, the road was already swallowed by darkness. My headlights cut through the gloom, but it felt like the trees were closing in, their branches reaching for the car. By the time I stepped out, I couldn't see the stars. The sky was a solid, oppressive black. The whispers returned, faint at first, like a distant wind. But as I walked deeper into the forest, they grew louder, rising into a chorus that filled my ears and mind. This time, they weren't begging or commanding. They were welcoming me home. The clearing was different now. The pale tree was larger, its branches stretching impossibly high, twisting into the darkness above. The soil around it was no longer black but glowing faintly, pulsing in time with the whispers. And in the center of the clearing stood the figures, hundreds of them, their pale faces turned toward me. They parted as I approached, creating a path that led directly to the tree. The creature was waiting, its smoke-like form shifting and writhing as it stepped forward. "You've returned," it said, its voice filling my mind like a flood. "You are ready." I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. The forest had me now, body and soul. The creature extended a tendril, brushing it against my chest. A cold, sharp pain pierced my heart, and I felt something inside me unraveling. The transformation was slow, agonizing. I could feel my body changing, my skin growing colder, my limbs heavier. My reflection in the pale glow of the soil showed the truth. My face was becoming like theirs, smooth and featureless, my eyes fading into hollow voids. I was no longer me. The whispers were my thoughts now, their voices blending with mine until I couldn't tell where I ended and they began. The forest wasn't just consuming me. It was becoming me, and I was becoming it. As the creature stepped aside, I understood my purpose. The figures turned, their empty faces watching as I moved toward the tree. Its branches bent low, welcoming me into its embrace. The whispers rose into a crescendo, a single, overwhelming word echoing in my mind. Home. I don't know what happens next. I don't think I'll remember. But if you're reading this, know one thing: the forest isn't just a place. It's alive and it's waiting. Sees you, hears you, feels you. And if it calls, you won't be able to resist. Because the forest always gets what it wants. And now it has me. This is it. My final entry. There's nothing left of me now, nothing human. The last remnants of who I was are fading as I write this, my thoughts fracturing, merging with the whispers, until I can't tell where I end and the forest begins. But before I'm gone, I need you to understand. The moment I stepped into the pale tree's embrace, I became part of something far greater than myself. The forest isn't just alive, it's eternal. It stretches beyond time, beyond place, its roots tangled in the fabric of existence itself. Every shadow, every whisper, every unexplainable moment of dread, they're all pieces of it. It's not evil, not in the way we understand. It's hunger, purpose, a force as natural and unstoppable as the tides. When the tree took me, I saw everything. The countless souls it has claimed, their lives and fears and pain absorbed into the endless cycle. I saw the pale faces, their emptiness a reflection of what the forest had taken. And I saw the future. It's endless. The transformation was complete before I even realized it. My body no longer feels like mine, just a vessel for the forest's will. My limbs are weightless, my face a pale, smooth void. I've become one of them, a figure standing in the endless ranks that encircle the tree. But I am different. The whispers have told me so. The forest has chosen me to be its voice, its herald. I am the one who will carry its will beyond the woods, into the places it cannot yet reach. And I will obey. If you found these words, it means the forest is already reaching for you. The pale faces are watching. The whispers are stirring. The shadows are growing. You may think you can ignore it, that you can resist. You can't. When the forest calls, it's not a question of if you'll answer. Only when. As I take my place beneath the pale tree, I feel no fear, no sadness. Only the steady rhythm of the forest's hunger, pulsing through me like a second heartbeat. My thoughts are fading now, replaced by the whispers, the shadows, the endless, echoing voice of the woods. I am the forest, and soon you will be too.